Hey, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and I am back with another video. My first one in quite a while, actually. I haven't put up a video since the end of the GBAD League, but this one's going to be a kind of a different one. It's going to be a draft analysis, which I guess isn't so different, but the format is definitely unique. If you're not familiar or you haven't heard, the Token Minorities, hosted by Jolt, Danza, Styx, all that gang, are doing what they're calling a surge format. And so to quickly summarize it, basically we start off the draft, you can draft between 6 and 8 Pokemon, and you only have a 50-point budget. So it's a point style draft with the normal points, but you can only start with a 50-point budget, and you can, in this first round, you can only draft Pokemon that are 10 points or lower. And so the reason that it's called Surge is because as you go through more and more rounds, your points budget increases, and the price of Pokemon also increases. So for example, in round 2, you have increased to 60 points for your budget, and you can have Pokemon on your team that are 12 and lower, 75 points for round 3, and Pokemon 14 or lower, and so on and so forth. So there's like an intermediate draft in between each of the rounds. So you can have the opportunity to upgrade your team however you choose. And so I guess that's why it's called Surge. Like, the strength of your Pokemon is surging as the tournament goes on. So it was a really interesting concept. And a few weeks ago, Jolt hit me up and said, hey, you know, we're trying to get some content creators together for the All-Star round of this. We've been running sort of prelims, if you will, all summer. And now we want to bring it out with our All-Star division. And so I really appreciated him sending me the invite. I'm quite looking forward to giving this a shake and seeing if it's as fun as I think it is. And so there's 32 of us that are playing. It was split into 2 draft pools of 16. And in our pool, I think we were in the Moon division, and the other one was the Sun division. We ended up with like the 8th overall pick or 9th overall pick or something like that. And so, right smack dab in the middle, I didn't really have a draft strategy going into this because I've never done anything like this before. So it was sort of hard to know what to draft, but I had 2 general thoughts. I felt like fairies and steels would be at a premium. I guess that's thought number 1. Thought number 2, fairies at a premium, steels at a premium are the 2 thoughts. And so I wanted to try and get really reliable fairy and steel types in this draft. But other than that, I just wanted to make sure I have like my normal responses to certain things. Like, I like to have my switch-ins to fighting types. I like to have my switch-ins to ground types. I like to have my switch-ins to fire types, etc., etc. And so, with that said, when the 8th pick, or 9th pick, again, I think it was the 8th pick, when that rolled around to me, Primarina was on the board, and Primarina I thought was probably the best Pokemon in the whole draft. Like, just to give you an idea for some of the mons that are available for 10 points in this draft, there's like Aerodactyl, Amoonguss, Crawdaunt, Decidueye, Emboar, Ninetales, Alola, Swellow, Tyrantrum, things like that. Other than probably Alola Ninetales, I think Primarina is the best in this pool. And like, I think Ninetales is better for a different reason. It's like, it's a very, very good support Pokemon. It might be the best support Pokemon in all of Draft League, to be honest. But it's not quite as potent offensively and defensively. Like, it's not as strong, and its typing is not as good as Primarina's. So Primarina just has a really, really powerful special attack and 2 really good stabs that not many Pokemon can resist. Like things like Ferrothorn and Tentacruel and things like that are the only mons that I can think of that resist both of these stabs. So the number of Pokemon that can really switch in on this is pretty little. It's got really nice special defense. Its defense stat can be pretty good if you invest into it. But yeah, like, this thing is just so hard to switch into for most teams that either they're not going to have a switch in for it, or it's going to be, like, especially in an 8-mon format instead of an 11-mon format, it's going to force certain types of prep. So I thought Primarina would be an awesome pick because it's very restrictive on team building. not much more to talk about it there. Next, I noticed that Linoon was only 7 points. And Linoon's a Pokemon that I've been wanting to use for quite some time. I've been getting pretty close with my good buddy Kelly under the radar, and one of his favorite Pokemon to use is Linoon. And so I've been itching for an opportunity to use it myself. And so on the coming back in the second round, I thought Linoon would be really fun to draft. And it kind of made sense as a partner for Primarina. Like, there's only a few types that Linoon doesn't like dealing with. Mainly steel types, I think. And Primarina is, because it's fairy type, it does sort of pressure steels. Like, steels might want to switch into it. But of course, I have water moves that I can use to hit steel types very, very hard. So if I can weaken steel types, then Linoon's in a pretty good position. I think it was Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, it did get Stomping Tantrum as well, as a way to deal a little bit more reliably with steel types. Because otherwise, I think the best move that it had was Rock Smash. There's pretty much only one moveset you run on this thing. You run Belly Drum, and that's basically it. Even like Choice Band Extreme Speed isn't that powerful. But yeah, you pretty much just run it for Belly Drum Extreme Speed with Gluttony, and you run something like a Guava Berry or something like that. Something that'll give you your HP back after you go up to, down to 50% HP. So, something that I just really wanted to use. I think it's very potent in a draft that doesn't have very many good steel types. And I think I have a pretty good Pokemon for pressuring steel types anyway. Another Pokemon that I thought would support Linoon really well was Skuntank. And so Skuntank I thought was good, mainly because it has Memento for weakening Pokemon that, or weakening their attack stats and giving Linoon more opportunities to set up. It does get Pursuit, so it can trap ghost types that otherwise Linoon cannot touch. And then it's got other awesome support options like Defog and things like that, Acid Spray, etc. It has a really useful ability in Aftermath, making it pretty good switch-in for a lot of reliable attackers. Poison Dark is just such a good typing. It's only weak to ground, and it allows it to deal with a lot of fairy types relatively well. Deals with grass types, deals with psychic types, etc., etc. So Skuntank I thought was just a really good partner here, and this was also available for 7 points if I'm not mistaken. That was actually how much? It is 6 points actually. So I thought it was a really good value at 6 points, and it felt like it fit the what I was trying to do with my team. So now we're 3 rounds in. There's been a lot of steel types that have gone already, like Bronzong has already gone, Bisharp has already gone. I wanted to make sure I got a really decent steel type before I lost the opportunity. Like Empoleon was already gone as well, for example. So I decided to go with Steelix, and so Steelix has always been a personal favorite of mine. I'm actually planning to use shiny versions of this. Because its typing is just so damn good. Like, Steel Ground is amazing. Like, yes, it has a couple of weaknesses, like more than just a straight-up Steel type would have. Because that ground typing makes it weak to water, things like that. It's not as reliable versus grass types. But being able to switch in automatically to electric types with this, and, a lot of the best coverage moves that most electric types have, like Ice and Grass, are negated by the Steel typing that Steelix has. So I think it's just a really awesome typing. Its stats are definitely funky, like, so much Fizz Def, and not much else. Like, it's not that strong, it doesn't have much special defense, but if you invest in its special defense, it does okay. And it has a deceptive move pool, like, it's got Fire Fang, it's got Ice Fang, etc. And the fact that it has Sheer Force means that these moves are powered up by quite a bit. So this move is like almost 100 base power when all is said and done. I think it's like 90 something base power. And it's got Rock Slide as well, which we can use with combination with Sheer Force. It becomes like 97 base power or something like that. I don't anticipate that I'll end up giving this thing a Life Orb, but that's another way for it to hit additionally hard, despite not having a really big attack stat. So, and the Life Orb isn't that great because, like, its best ground type move, Earthquake, doesn't combine with Sheer Force, so the Life Orb damage is not negated. But you can run Iron Head, and then that gets boosted by Sheer Force and Life Orb quite well. So this is just, it's really robust. It's great for dealing with fairies, steels, electrics, flying types too. Flying can be very scary. Swellow did get drafted in this format, so gotta have to be on the lookout for that. So Steelix was something that I had on my radar since round 1 and was happy to grab it in round 4. Don't know if it was a reach or not, but I think there were a few folks who were sad that I took it. So it was definitely on some people's wish lists. So then next, at this point, like Steelix is only 4 points, so I have quite a few points left in my budget. So I'm trying to think of the best ways to spend it. One Pokemon I do have my eye on, and you do see that I have it on my draft list here, is Duosion. I think Duosion at 1 point is extremely, extremely good. Like really, really good. Because it actually has the same special attack stat as Reuniclus, but I'll talk more about that when we get to Duosion. So that left me with 22 points to make my final 3 picks. And so, one Pokemon that stood out to me as being pretty solid is Virizion. And so Virizion's nice because it's got a pretty nice speed tier. Right now my team is relatively slow. It's got good setup options on both the physical and special side. It's a ground resist, which is really important to have in general. And it's a very, very valuable Z-move user. So I gave this Pokemon my Z Crystal. In each draft, you were allowed to select one Pokemon to be your Z user, and I selected Virizion to be mine. So yeah, I just think this is really, really potent offensively. And then, you know, the fact that it's a grass type means it's a good switch into grass and water types as well. Really excited to use Virizion. I just finished using Terrakion in the GBA D League. And while Virizion doesn't pack quite the punch that Terrakion does, I'm hoping it can do its best impression. At least until I get to the point in the draft where I potentially drop it. But yeah, you know, it's just a really nice Mon with a good speed tier. Next, I wanted another rocker on my team, and I wanted another ground resist. And so Minior checked both of those boxes. And Minior is also, it's just kind of a funny Mon in general because it has this funky ability, Shields Down. It allows it to basically get a speed boost and an attack boost when it goes below half HP. So this can be like both offensive and defensive in a way. Because when it's in its a shield form, it's got pretty good bulk. It's got 100 defense, 100 special defense, and then 60 HP. So maybe it's even 120, I don't know for sure. It gets rocks, which is like something that I really wanted, like I was saying. It even has some other decent utility, like it has U-turn. So if I wanted to run like a banded set or something weird, I could run U-turn. And that would be pretty good. I do get Shell Smash. That's probably the most notable move that Minior gets, besides things like Stealth Rock. And I do like that this Mon gets Acrobatics. You can use this in combination with Shell Smash and White Herb. And it can really put in work. So yeah, it's really nice. And having the Rock type as well as a potential backup for dealing with flying types, you know, in case Steelix is pressured, is quite useful as well. Flying types, I know, are very, very scary offensively. So we got the Minior here. Next, we do have the Duosion. I could have gotten this in the last round, but I thought there was a decent chance that some folks would want to have this as a value pick as well. And so I decided to snag it a little early. It doesn't have really tremendous bulk, so I think that most of the time you're going to be running this with the Violite, even if you're running like a Trick Room set, just because it doesn't really have the bulk to set up a Trick Room on most things. So even though you could potentially run like a Life Orb set, I'm not 100% sure that it's worth it. It doesn't have quite all the same coverage as Reuniclus does, like it doesn't have Focus Blast, unfortunately, but I do think it gets Thunder, and it does. And it still gets other things as well. Does it get Knockoff? No, it doesn't look like this one gets Knockoff. It's just Reuniclus that gets Knockoff. So, mainly, I think this has some potency as a Calm Mind Sweeper, you know, in a combination with Recover, and probably a Psychic move like this. That's what seems most potent to me. But yeah, it just seems like a really, really good value at 1 point. Yeah, it's a really, really good switch into fighting types and psychic types. So if my opponent has something like Metacham or Sock or something like that, you know, basically any fighting type that's not Pangoro or Scrafty or something like that, Duosion can be a very sturdy switch into that. And I always like having sturdy switch-ins to fighting types. So Virizion was 9, Minior was 9, like I said before, Duosion was 1, that leaves me with 4 points, and Flareon was a Mon that was available for 4 points. And so this is kind of a nice pick because it is a good wall breaker to pair with Primarina. Well, it's just, but what I mean by that is it's a very strong physical attacker, whereas Primarina is a strong special attacker. I don't think that they necessarily have like great synergy together. Like they don't really the Pokemon that Primarina would struggle with, like grass types and steel types potentially. Flareon does blow those back. Usually when I think of like good wall breakers pairing well with one another, you think of Pokemon that wear down each other's checks. So like Staraptor and Talonflame, for example, in Gen 6, you would use Staraptor to weaken your opponent's checks to Talonflame, and then you come in and use like a Banded Brave Bird to clean up the game. So I don't think Primarina and Flareon have that sort of synergy, but like the Pokemon that beat Flareon, Primarina can beat, and the Pokemon that beat Primarina, Flareon can beat, which is pretty nice. You know, you'll probably be having this with like Toxic Orb and Guts, just to make moves like Flare Blitz hit so incredibly hard. You know, coming off this really nice 130 attack stat. Has other nice moves like Flare, like a Flame Charge, which is pretty cheeky. It also has Wish, Baton Pass, and so for 4 points, I thought this was a pretty good selection. And it has, you know, pretty decent special defense if needed. So all around, I thought Flareon was a pretty cool choice, and I think Flareon had always been my favorite going back to the Gen 1 days anyway, so I'm finally happy to have a good excuse to use it. Flareon doesn't really see much use in normal drafts. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is my team for the Token Minorities Surge Tournament. This is going to be going up on Saturday afternoon, and we actually do have our Round 1 matchup going up on Sunday. Sometime in the afternoon, probably. Don't know for sure. Have to coordinate with my opponent, who is none other than Old Man Tup, coach of the Pittsburgh Paraditas. You guys likely know him of GBA fame, and he's also been repping the NPA in several recent seasons. So really excited to have the opportunity to play him. He's the one I've looked up to for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of you feel the same. So make sure you check that out. Make sure you check out his channel. Big thanks once again to Jolt and the gang for hosting the tournament. Their information is going to be down in the description, as well as the information for all of the coaches. So make sure you check that out. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out the channel for other gaming and Pokemon content. And until the next time, I'll see you guys later.